It was a quiet evening, and he was sitting alone in his small apartment, reading a book by the dim light of a lamp. The rain had started softly outside, tapping on the window like a gentle drum. He was enjoying the calm after a long day, lost in the world of his story, when suddenly there was a knock at the door. It was quick, almost shy, but enough to make him put the book down and walk over. When he opened the door, he saw a woman standing there, soaked from the rain. Her hair stuck to her face, and her clothes were wet and heavy. She looked exhausted, but there was a hint of embarrassment in her eyes, like she didn't know what to do. She explained that her car had broken down and she didn't have anywhere to go for the night. There was a small pause, and she looked at him, silently hoping he would say something. He felt a mixture of surprise and concern. It was unexpected, someone appearing at his door in the middle of a rainy night, but he also saw the need in her eyes. Without thinking too much, he stepped aside and invited her in. He told her she could dry off and rest, and she hesitated for a moment, then stepped inside, dripping water onto the mat. He grabbed a towel and handed it to her. Trying to hide his nervousness, she smiled faintly, grateful, and started to dry her hair. The apartment was small, with just enough room for the two of them to move without bumping into each other. He noticed how tense she seemed, like she wasn't used to being in someone else's space. He offered her a cup of tea, and she accepted, warming her hands around it as she sat down. For a few moments, they just sat quietly, listening to the rain outside and the soft hum of the heater. There was a strange mix of comfort and awkwardness in the air, like they were both aware that this night was unusual, but neither wanted it to be uncomfortable. He glanced at her and saw a flicker of curiosity, and she looked back with a faint, nervous smile. In that quiet, rainy apartment, first thread of connection began to form between them. She sat on the small couch, sipping the warm tea he had made. The warmth seemed to seep into her hands, and she let out a small, relaxed sigh. He sat across from her, pretending to read his book again, but he couldn't help stealing glances at her. There was something about the way she looked, tired but alive, that kept him quietly curious. After a few minutes, she spoke softly. The conversation started lightly about the rain and how unpredictable the weather could be. He chuckled at her small story about getting caught without an umbrella. She laughed genuinely, a sound that seemed to fill the room. It was simple, yet comforting, and it made the apartment feel warmer than the heater ever could. As the tea cooled, the conversation slowly shifted. She began talking about her day, the little frustrations and awkward moments that everyone experiences but rarely shares. He listened quietly, nodding and offering small comments, careful not to interrupt. There was honesty in the way she spoke, and it made him feel like he could be honest too. He shared small details about his own life, the lonely days and quiet nights. And she listened just as attentively. They started talking about things deeper than just work or weather. She mentioned dreams she had once chased but had put aside, and he told her about hopes he quietly held on to. There were pauses in between, moments when they just looked at each other, sharing understanding without words. It felt strange and natural at the same time, like meeting someone who could see parts of you that others often miss. There was laughter too, little jokes and teasing that broke the tension, making the night feel lighter. He noticed how her eyes brightened when she smiled, and she seemed to notice the same warmth in his gaze. It was a quiet connection, built slowly in a few hours. But it carried weight. By the time the cup was empty, the room felt different. The space between them was no longer just the couch and the floor, it was a quiet bond forming. They shared a comfort that was unexpected but welcome. Each word, each glance, and each pause added to a feeling neither of them could put into words yet. The rain continued outside, but inside, the storm had given way to something gentle and human. A moment of connection that neither wanted to end. The clock on the wall ticked quietly, marking the passing time of the rainy night. They had moved from light talk to sharing more personal thoughts, and there was a warmth in the room that neither had expected. She shifted slightly on the couch, her hands still wrapped around the empty teacup. A sign that sleep was beginning to tug at her. There was a pause, a moment of hesitation. She looked at him with a mixture of hope and uncertainty, unsure how to ask the question that had been on her mind. Finally, with a quiet voice that barely rose above the sound of the rain, she asked, "Is there room in your bed?" The words hung in the air for a moment, delicate and loaded with meaning. It wasn't just about a place to sleep, it was a question of trust, of comfort, of being allowed into someone's personal space. He looked at her, noting the vulnerability in her eyes, and felt a soft tug in his chest. He smiled gently, not in a teasing way, but with sincerity. He replied, "Only if you want a place in my chest." The answer was more than a simple yes, it was an offer of emotional safety. A silent promise that she could feel secure, cared for, and understood. She paused, processing the weight behind his words. There was a sense of relief and warmth that washed over her, a feeling that she had been seen and accepted in a way that mattered. The tension in her shoulders softened, and for the first time since the rain had started, she felt completely at ease. He rose and led the way to the bedroom, moving slowly to keep the atmosphere calm and respectful. She followed, carrying a quiet trust with her. The room was small and cozy, lit only by the soft glow of the lamp he had left on. It wasn't about closeness in the physical sense yet. It was about sharing space and feeling safe together. They settled down, sitting on the edge of the bed, the night wrapping around them like a gentle blanket. They continued talking softly, whispering stories and thoughts that they hadn't shared with anyone else. Every glance, every small movement, strengthened the bond that had quietly grown since she first knocked on the door. The rain outside became a background rhythm, a gentle reminder of how this unexpected night had brought them to a moment that felt both fragile and profound. They settled onto the bed, careful to give each other space. The room was quiet except for the soft patter of rain on the window. Neither spoke at first, letting the silence carry them gently. There was a comfort in just being near someone who understood, even without words. Slowly, she began to talk about her past moments of disappointment, losses and dreams she had given up on. He listened closely, never interrupting, letting her words fill the room. She could feel the sincerity in his attention, and it gave her courage to share more than she had intended. In turn, shared his own experiences, his own struggles, and the quiet loneliness that often weighed on him. They laughed softly at awkward memories and paused to reflect on the heavier ones. Every story shared felt like a thread connecting them, building a quiet, unspoken bond. There were no judgments, only understanding, and that made the space between them feel safe. At times, their hands brushed accidentally, and they both flinched slightly, then smiled, acknowledging the small moment. It was a delicate closeness, not rushed or forced, but natural and comforting. The night stretched on, with whispered conversations about hopes for the future, regrets from the past, and the small, everyday moments that made them human. They found themselves talking about the simplest things, like the taste of tea, the sound of rain, or the soft creak of the floorboards. Yet, those small details felt significant because they were shared together. The closeness was emotional more than physical, space where they could be fully themselves without fear. Eventually they leaned back, shoulders nearly touching, and watched the rain through the window. The world outside was cold and wet, but inside there was warmth and quiet companionship. They felt a rare comfort in knowing that they had found someone who would listen, who would understand, who could offer a sense of belonging in that small room. The night became more than just a time to pass. It became a time to connect, to heal, and to share unspoken feelings. Each moment, each story, and each gentle glance strengthened the bond they had begun to form, making the unexpected night one neither of them would ever forget. Morning light spilled gently through the window, casting a warm glow across the small bedroom. They stirred quietly, neither wanting to break the peaceful moment too quickly. The night had been long, filled with soft conversation, laughter, and a rare kind of comfort that comes when someone truly feels safe with another person. He noticed her still half asleep, wrapped in the blanket, and felt a calm joy in seeing her relaxed for the first time since the rain had started. She looked at him with a soft smile, one that said more than words ever could. There was a silent understanding between them now, a bond that had grown from the unexpected encounter at the door the night before. They got up slowly and moved to the small kitchen. He prepared a simple breakfast while she watched, the quiet morning making every movement feel significant. They talked softly about little things, the kind of gentle chatter that happens when people are at ease with each other. Even the sound of rain dripping from the roof outside felt comforting, a reminder of how this night had brought them together. As they sat down with their breakfast, there was a quiet acknowledgement of the connection they had formed. The night had been brief, but the bond felt enduring. It was not about rushing or planning the future yet. It was about appreciating the moment. The unexpected warmth of finding someone who understood without judgment. They laughed over small stories from their past, teased each other gently, and shared quiet silences that felt natural and reassuring. Each glance, each smile, and each small touch reinforced the sense of trust and comfort they had discovered. It was a human connection, pure and simple, born out of honesty, empathy, and shared vulnerability. Eventually, they gathered their things, ready to face the day ahead. There was no need for grand gestures or promises. The night had given them something more subtle and profound, a reminder that human hearts can find home in unexpected places. As she left, there was a sense of gratitude and quiet hope, a feeling that this encounter had changed them both in ways they would carry forward. The rain had stopped, but the warmth from the night remained, lingering in their hearts as a soft, unforgettable memory.